Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Now let me speak in English for those Korean Americans who do not understand Korean fluently, so that we could, build a strong confidence to defend South Korea among international entities, especially promoting understanding and cooperation scheme between the United States and South Korea. Today, let me touch on the article published in the Address Council by the name of paper, which was released 18th June, written by Mark Cozard, Curtis Cooper, and etc. etc. The title of today's comment is based on the article's name, Future Scenarios for Sino-Russian Military Cooperation, Possibilities, Limitations, and Consequences. Which means that as a new Cold War structure is deepened and enhanced, more military cooperation between Beijing and Moscow is being implemented gradually. So in this paper, there are key research questions, which is a framework to analyze these questions. Number one, under what possible scenarios and circumstances might Moscow and Beijing agree to participate in a combined military operation with each other? The first question. Second question, what roles might Russia and China accept in these future scenarios? What kind of roles? So, in this report, the authors explore possible future cooperation scenarios in which the Russian Armed Forces and the People's Liberation Army could operate together as a coalition partners. The authors examine historical patterns of Russian and Chinese alliance behavior, as well as current military-to-military engagement between these two militaries. That include exercises, training events, such operational activities as joint maritime and air patrols and high-level exchanges. Given this military engagement trend, three scenarios that illustrate how Russian and Chinese forces might operate together under different strategic and operational circumstances are then examined gradually here. These scenarios are then used to identify the prospect and pitfalls for future Russian and Chinese military cooperation in conflict, and to explore implications for U.S. policymakers and commanders and planners, and also as references for academics. So what are the key findings of this research paper? Number one, from Moscow's perspective, partnership with China is a strategic imperative for Russia to maintain its claim to great power status. And China's support has helped Russia withstand some of the most negative consequences of Western sanctions, particularly through China's purchase of a record amount of energy from Russia. Second, the Russia-China partnership is so critical for Beijing. With no alliances of its own, Beijing views Moscow's mutual support as the most important strategic relationship and an effective counterweight to U.S. power. As the de facto senior partner in the relationship, Beijing simultaneously sees a significant opportunity to exploit Russia's weakness, which Beijing has leveraged to gain access to inexpensive energy, advanced military technology, and strategic resources. Third, strategic cooperation and coordination in the overall military-to-military relationship suggest that expanded cooperation might eventually include some form of combined military cooperation, but this possibility remains uncertain at best. However, cooperation is not the same as interoperability. So the likely cost of direct military confrontation with the United States make the willingness of either country to enter into such an operation either independently or as a coalition. Unlikely, especially from Beijing's perspective. Unlikely, especially from Beijing's perspective. Short of a mutual defense treaty, other forms of military cooperation should be expected to intensify. Deeper integration would likely result in a more complex and more frequent training and exercises between Russian and the Chinese forces. Interactions that likely engender expanded technology and skills transfers. Similarly, in the same context, increased integration could potentially lead both militaries to consider operating in a new geographic areas or domains, perhaps with new operational concept they develop jointly. So there are some recommendations in this paper for those two countries, and with some implications for policy making for the decision makers in the United States government. Efforts to break apart the Sino-Russian relationship are unlikely to succeed and may end up motivating both Russia and China to strengthen their ties. This strategic partnership is vital to Putin and Xi Jinping, but its importance preceded them and will extend beyond their tenures. So, the United States' most effective means for countering the Russia-China strategic partnership is ensuring the health of its own alliances and pursuing ever greater cooperation among its most important allies and partners. The U.S. network of alliances is a significant advantage. South Korea is among those key countries. Although the possibilities for cooperation in a combined operation appear to be limited now, U.S. planners and policymakers need to consider the circumstances under which Russia and China might pursue cooperation and factor those considerations into planning effort. Policymakers and planners should avoid overestimating the state of military cooperation and operational integration that exists between Russia and China. Deterrence issues in the context of the Russia-China relationship will become increasingly complicated because of Moscow's and Beijing's differing risk calculations and perspectives on the role of nuclear weapons. So the United States should consider such areas of friction as an opportunity to inject doubt into the mind of senior leaders in Russia and China about the costs and risks associated with the conflict involving the United States and its allies. So my own conclusion is that what are the implications for South Korea then? Well, we need to talk to Russian, Chinese government, even though they are strongly tied to North Korea militarily. But the key alliance pillar is the United States, and one step further, the key alliance pillar could be Washington, Seoul, Tokyo ties in the future, into extending our roles into a larger context of Indo-Pacific strategies pursued by the United States, possibly joining Quad, joining AUKUS, expanding our roles and responsibilities to meet the demands the United States is requiring from its allied partners. Of course, we need to dialogue. We have dialogue with those, Russian military authorities, also Chinese military authorities, partially, but not much confidence on those partners. But still, dialogue is necessary to avoid the conflict on the Korean Peninsula, possibly giving pleasure to North Korean leader, sometimes, pressuring North Korean dictatorship not to make any provocations against South Korea in the future. So we are living in a multilateral world order, but in terms of military cooperation, still new Cold War structure is limiting our stances and rooms for us to maneuver to keep our security ties among many global partners based on a strong security pillar with Washington. Then comes Japan. Then comes, Australia. Then comes, New Zealand, India, and the NATO members in the future. Even though new Cold War structure is creating some very tension-ridden situation on the Korean Peninsula, still looking into a dark side of Russian, Chinese, North Korean nuclear partnerships in the future. We have to dialogue with them if it's possible to avoid some disasters on the Korean Peninsula. So we have to study and we have to implement all the policies necessary to keep peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. Thank you so much.